company this Ramadan.
Well, the time is just gone 4:43 p.m. on the Iftar Drive on this Friday afternoon with myself, Inayat Wadi, as we continue with the broadcast. And we will take you right towards the end at around 6:10 when we break our fast in Johannesburg. So I'll be with you right throughout the entire afternoon until the sun sets. But right now, we're going across to be joined by political economist and researcher David van Wyk. And the question we are asking is, and we've seen it for a long time, is the state creating a dependency culture through social grants, considering how the numbers are increasing as the years go by? David van Wyk, good morning, good afternoon, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, and peace be to you.
Well, David, I get so used to talking to you in the morning, and we've got to get used to the afternoons as well. But nevertheless, David, let's talk about, this dependency culture on social grants. We've seen the presidency tweeting in 1999, just over 2.5 million people were receiving social grants. Today, that number has increased to over 18 million people. What is going on, David?
Well, I think that it's a reflection of the increase in unemployment in this country. The economy is not creating jobs. The state is not creating jobs either. And of course, the state is in very deep debt. It's taking out one loan after the other loan just to survive. And as a consequence, to repay these debts, it has to apply austerity measures. And the austerity measures that it applies is in the maintenance of critical infrastructure, buildings, roads, and so on, as well as in education, health services, and that sort of thing. And the state is the biggest consumer in society. So if the state consumes less and less and less, the economy is growing less and less and less. More and more people are getting retrenched, and they become unemployed, and then they become dependent on state grants. Now, I'm sitting here with load shedding as I'm talking to you right now. The ESCOM crisis has to do with the maintenance of critical infrastructure, which the state is not doing because it can't afford to do it properly. And it hasn't been doing so for a long time because the more loans it takes out, the worse the situation gets. So we can make a graph showing the increase in debt, the increase in unemployment, and the increase in social grants. And it affects the private sector as well, because the state being the biggest consumer in society, the less it consumes, the less contracts that are going out to the private sector. And then, of course, the other factor is that the state is losing its capacity to create jobs because it's privatizing everything. The capacity that it had to create jobs is disappearing. In 1948, the National Party created jobs for Afrikaners with ESCOM, Sasol, ISCO, railways. All my uncles and so on worked for the railways, or they worked for Sasol or one of these state enterprises. Today, the state enterprises are empty shells. They are no longer in existence. So they're no longer creating jobs because since the mid-1980s, the National Party had a strategy of ensuring that the economy is emptied out so that when a new government comes into power after democratic elections, it will just be a government without any capacity. It will own absolutely nothing. And what we have seen is that the little that the government owns is also now collapsing all around it because it can't afford to maintain those things. And then we also have the other scourge of corruption as well.
Well, David, what you are saying is very, very interesting because we know the correlation, the link between the unemployment problem, on social grants, but also at the same time looking at the government and how the government utilizes the whole concept of social grants and making people dependent on these grants to the government as a political tool and using it as leverage as well. So one cannot write that off, David.
Well, you see, the government says that President Ramaphosa says that this shows an increase in support. An increase in support for whom? For the people who are receiving social grants, or an increase in support for the ANC? Or what? What exactly is he meaning? So if you've got half the population of the country unemployed, and that unemployed half of the country is dependent on social grants, then the threat by any party to cut those social grants in elections will swing votes, and we are moving into an election year now. So anyone who says they're going to cut those grants won't get the votes of those people who are unemployed. They're a huge constituency of 19 million. The only way you can get the support of those people is either to give them grants and through dependency, or to give them jobs. And South Africa is a country that has a huge amount of work to be done. Roads need to repair, potholes need to be filled, Eskom need to be fixed, dams need to be maintained, hospitals need to be repaired, schools need to be, reconstructed and built up, housing, etc., etc. There's so much work in this country that needs to be done that is not getting done. But we've got 19 million people getting money, but they are not actually working.
Well, this is a major problem. And when one looks at how these numbers have grown over the years, at the beginning I spoke about 2.5 million in 1999, right until 18 million. It's actually very, very scary, David, as to where this entire thing can actually go and what it could ultimately mean for the country.
Well, I think that if we look at Eskom, we're under threat of Eskom collapsing and us, with the country having a total blackout due to the lack of maintenance and also the lack of wastage due to corruption, with Kusile and Medupe and so on. Now, at the same time, as we are looking at the possibility of a power collapse, we're also looking at the possibility of a total collapse of the economy. The things all feed into each other because with the current load shedding, we're going to have more and more unemployed people as more and more businesses close down. The economy is being suffocated by high prices of fuel and so on. It's being suffocated by high prices for electricity, which is not delivered. And it's being suffocated by a situation where taxes on the few people who remain employed are actually increased all the time. And so at some point, just like Eskom might collapse, the entire economy might collapse. And we really, really have to be worried at this particular point. And we can't say that we talk about an increase in support. An increase in support of what? It's a really flippant statement by the president to make. An increase in support for the indigent population. Well, the indigent population is caused by government policy.
Exactly, David. And I do understand exactly where you are coming from by making that statement. But also, again, in terms of sustainability, and as you mentioned, that there are the few that are carrying the rest of the country, but for how long will they be able to sustain this country? And if we do get at the point of we get to a point where we are collapsed, and there is no money even for social grants, and then again it's going to be borrowing, it's going to be the same cycle, vicious cycle, repeating itself over and over again. But all of this, David, tells me one thing, that this country could be ripe for a revolution.
Well, I think, yes, we are heading to that particular situation because every grant increase there is, or every increase in spending by government on whatever issue, whether it's health or housing or whatever, is simply absorbed by higher prices. And so consequently, you actually get less for your money after the increase every time. So you are seeing with a situation where, in the early 1970s, you had a big uprising in the Durban area, and people said that the agitators at that time was not this or that group or this or that person. It was actually the stomach of people driving them into the streets and into a situation of confrontation with the state and with the private sector and so on. But there's a big difference now. Between 1973 and 1994, we had a highly organized working class in this country. We no longer have that because labor broking and subcontracting and so on has broken the back of the unions, and it has broken the back of political consciousness in the masses of the people. So crime is in fact that revolution that you are speaking about. We're going to see increased crime, and the crime is going to become increasingly violent. And because it's not got any leadership or consciousness, it is going to become anarchistic, and we're going to have a real problem.
Well, certainly. And also, I think just finally, David, uh, is there a way out? Is there any silver lining? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel that could give us some hope? Or has this government just lost the plot completely?
And instead of social grants, we should actually have public works programs. Anyone who gets money from the government should actually be made to paint schools and classrooms or fix potholes or do something useful to repair the country. For me, it's shocking to drive through the country and see how towns and cities are disintegrating. The other aspect of this, the increased criminality, of course, is people stripping the public resources. You're getting railways being carried off, you're getting fences being torn down, you're getting the electricity substations being plundered, and so on. This is all very, very important infrastructure for this economy. And, the recovery will require all those things to be fixed. Now, if you take these 19 million people and you put them into public works programs to fix those things, maybe we will get somewhere.
Well, it requires political will as well, and also at the end of the day, for the government to create a society that is more productive, that is more efficient, rather than just giving handouts. And again, like you mentioned, is there's certainly an agenda playing out behind the increase in social grants and how it serves the political agenda of the ruling party. But David, for now, thank you very much for your time with us this afternoon. We do appreciate it as always. You coming on and talking to us here on Asalam Media and unpacking what you have with us. So we do appreciate it, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
David van Wyk with us this afternoon, and again, a lot of food for thought in terms of what David had to say. And for the president, in what context does the presidency issue a tweet of this nature, where they're saying in 1999, just over 2.5 million were receiving social grants. Today, the number has increased to over 18 million people. Is this something that we as a nation should be proud of? Is this what the government should be boasting about in terms of increasing the numbers? If it is said in that context, really, this says a lot about a government that has basically lost it completely. They've lost the plot, and they don't know which way to turn to fix the mess that they've created. The time is just gone 4 minutes to 5. We're going to go for a break. We come back. We still have got a lot more to unpack on the show. We will be talking about basic information regarding diabetes and fasting. We also will be having our humanitarian hour at around 5:30 p.m. with Nasima Nala from the Crosby Ladies Forum. Our Nasiha advice that will take us through to the time of iftar in Johannesburg at around 10 minutes past 6 will be Maulana Shafiq Nolan out of Cape Town this afternoon. So a lot of ground to cover from now right until the time of iftar on this 8th day of Ramadan. Stay with us.